My wife organized a romantic getaway, just to empty my bank account. She didn't see my revenge coming. I should have known something was wrong when Clarissa started humming in the kitchen again. For months our house had been silent. Conversations reduced to logistics, schedules exchanged with the cold efficiency of business partners, rather than lovers. The silences between us had grown so dense you could almost touch them. We moved like ghosts in our own home, expertly navigating around each other in choreographed avoidance. So when I walked in from work on a dreary Tuesday to find her swaying slightly to music, wine glass in hand, and a smile I hadn't seen in nearly a year, alarm bells should have rung. Instead, I felt a treacherous spark of hope. "Hey," she said, her voice lifted with a warmth that felt like a memory. "I have a surprise." I loosened my tie, unsure how to respond to the stranger wearing my wife's face. "A surprise?" Clarissa slid a glossy brochure across the kitchen island. The cover showed an impossibly blue ocean lapping at pristine white sand, with a luxurious resort perched on a cliff overlooking the panorama. "I booked us a week at Seacliff Resort," she announced, eyes dancing with what looked like excitement. "Just you and me, no phones, no work, no distractions." I stared at the brochure, then back at her. "This is unexpected. That's what makes it perfect," she laughed, refilling her glass. "We need this, Daniel. When was the last time we actually connected?" Really connected? The question hung between us, heavy and pointed. The answer was obvious. Not since before she'd started working late 3 nights a week. Not since before I'd found receipts for dinners I never shared. Not since our joint savings account had mysteriously lost $5,000. She attributed to investment opportunities, but could never quite explain. "It's pretty expensive," I said carefully, flipping through pages showcasing private infinity pools and 5-star restaurants. "We deserve it," she countered smoothly. "Besides, it's partially a business opportunity too." And there it was, the first thread I could pull. "Business opportunity?" I echoed, keeping my tone neutral. She waved a dismissive hand, but her eyes sharpened slightly. "Nothing major, just some people I'd like you to meet. They're doing amazing things with property investments along the coast. Similar to what your uncle left you." My Uncle Richard had passed away 6 months ago, leaving me a modest but beautiful villa in a developing coastal region that was suddenly attracting wealthy international buyers. The property taxes were manageable, and I'd been quietly researching options, something Clarissa had shown zero interest in, until now apparently. "I didn't realize you were so interested in what happens with the villa," I said, accepting the glass of wine she offered. "Of course I am," she replied, touching my arm with feather-light fingers. "It's our future. We should be smart about it." The hour struck me as particularly interesting. When we'd received the inheritance, Clarissa had called it your uncle's old house, and suggested selling it immediately. I'd refused, feeling a sentimental attachment to the last connection I had to my mother's family. "When do we leave?" I asked, sipping the expensive wine I didn't remember buying. "Friday," she beamed. "I've already cleared your schedule with Sarah." My assistant, who Clarissa had previously referred to as that overly efficient mouse. "That's thorough of you." I wanted everything to be perfect. She moved closer, her perfume enveloping me in a cloud of jasmine and something sharper beneath. "Oh, and don't forget to bring those property documents and your investment portfolio. There's a financial advisor at the resort who's amazing, completely transformed the finances of one of the partners at my firm." The internal alarms grew louder, but I smiled. "Sure. Anything else I should pack?" "Just yourself," she purred, suddenly wrapping her arms around my neck in a gesture so unexpected I nearly flinched. "And maybe that blue shirt I bought you for Christmas. You know, the one that brings out your eyes?" The shirt she'd never once commented on before today. That night, while Clarissa showered, I sat in our home office, staring at the villa documents stored in my desk drawer. A property that had suddenly become interesting to my increasingly distant wife, right when she decided we needed a romantic reconnection. The timing wasn't just convenient, it was painfully obvious. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Mark. "Still on for lunch tomorrow? Need to talk to you about something." I replied quickly, "Definitely. Looks like I need to talk to you about something too." The next day, over sandwiches at a corner table in a noisy deli, I told Mark about the sudden vacation plans. "And she just sprung this on you?" he asked, eyebrows raised. After months of barely speaking to you, complete with wine and background music, I confirmed, and a sudden interest in Uncle Richard's villa. Mark set down his sandwich, his expression shifting to something harder. Daniel, I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but Melissa saw Clarissa last week. Melissa was Mark's wife, who worked at a competing law firm across town. Saw her where? Having lunch with Thomas Hadley. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thomas Hadley was one of the city's most aggressive divorce attorneys, known for securing brutal settlements for his clients. You're sure? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mark nodded grimly. Melissa said they were deep in conversation. Looked like business, not pleasure. I absorbed this information, feeling strangely calm. It was like watching the final pieces of a puzzle slip into place, revealing a picture I'd suspected all along but hadn't wanted to see. The trip is in 2 days, I said quietly. Apparently I need to bring all my financial documents and information about the villa. Mark's eyes widened. You're not still going? For the first time since Clarissa had shown me the brochure, I smiled genuinely. Oh, I'm definitely going, Daniel. Don't worry, I cut him off. I know exactly what I'm doing. I spent that afternoon making several calls to my bank, to my investment advisor, and finally to a private investigator who had helped one of my clients last year. By evening I had a clearer picture and the beginnings of a plan. When Clarissa returned from work, I greeted her with enthusiasm about our upcoming trip. I mentioned casually that I'd already gathered all my financial documents, including information about the villa. That's perfect timing, she said, the phrase setting off another internal alarm. Actually, I was thinking we could review everything on the first night, get the business part out of the way so we can focus on us for the rest of the trip. Perfect timing indeed, I agreed, watching her closely. I'm really looking forward to reconnecting. The smile she gave me didn't reach her eyes, but for once I was glad. Because mine probably didn't either. The Sea Cliff Resort was even more impressive in person than in the brochure. Our clifftop villa offered panoramic ocean views that would normally have left me breathless. Instead, I was busy watching Clarissa transform into someone I barely recognized, attentive, affectionate, almost desperate in her attempts to please me. What do you think, she asked, throwing open the French doors to our private terrace. Worth every penny, right? I smiled, nodding as I set down our bags. It's beautiful. The old me would have been touched by such thoughtfulness. The new me, the one who now knew she'd had 3 meetings with a divorce attorney in the past month, according to my PI, simply wondered how much this elaborate performance was costing. Perfect, I replied, matching her enthusiasm. Should I wear that blue shirt you mentioned? And this is just the beginning, she promised, her voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. I've arranged a surprise dinner on the beach tonight. Just us, candlelight, and the waves. Absolutely. She beamed, crossing the room to press a light kiss on my cheek, the first such gesture in months. I'm going to take a quick shower. The concierge dropped off champagne while you were checking in. Why don't you pour us some? As soon as the bathroom door closed, I moved quickly. I opened my laptop, navigating to our shared cloud storage, where we kept important documents. I'd spent the previous evening changing passwords and creating backup copies of everything related to my uncle's villa and personal finances. The originals were now stored on an encrypted drive with my brother. When Clarissa emerged wrapped in a plush resort robe, I was lounging on the balcony, 2 flutes of champagne waiting. She took a deep sip of champagne, then turned to face me. I've been thinking about the villa. Me too, I lied, squeezing her hand. It's been a while since we've had time together. This view is unbelievable, she sighed, settling beside me. Her hand found mine, fingers intertwining with practiced ease. I've missed this, Daniel. Just being with you. Well, she began, voice carefully casual. I was talking to this amazing financial advisor last week. He thinks we're not maximizing its potential. What about it? I asked, innocently. And there it was, barely 30 minutes into our supposedly romantic getaway. Is that right? The area is booming. Properties are selling for 3-4 times what they were worth just a year ago. Her eyes gleamed with something that wasn't love. We could sell it now, invest the money in something more diversified. I thought you knew how much that place means to me, I replied, injecting just the right amount of hurt into my voice. It's my last connection to Uncle Richard. You're probably right, I conceded after a moment of apparent consideration. Uncle Richard would want what's best for us. Her face softened instantly into a mask of compassion. Of course, honey, I'm just saying we might want to consider our options. Sentimentality is wonderful, but so is financial security. Relief flooded her features. Exactly, and the timing couldn't be better. I actually brought some paperwork. Our lawyer drew these up, she explained, sliding them across the table. Just some simple restructuring to optimize tax benefits. Basically, it puts the property in both our names so we can make decisions more efficiently. She rose gracefully, retrieving a sleek leather portfolio from her suitcase. Inside was a stack of documents, with yellow sticky tabs marking signature lines. I flipped through the pages, nodding thoughtfully while my stomach churned. The simple restructuring would transfer full ownership to Clarissa, with provisions allowing for sale without requiring dual consent. A brief flash of annoyance crossed her face before the smile returned. Of course not, but let's not let business ruin our first night. The documents will still be here tomorrow. This looks complicated, I commented. Mind if I read through it tonight? Dinner was a masterclass in manipulation. Under a canopy of stars, with waves crashing nearby and candlelight flickering across her face, Clarissa transformed into the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago, attentive, laughing at my jokes, asking about my work with apparent interest. The entire performance was designed to soften me up, to make me pliable for what was to come. Remember our honeymoon? She asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. That little cafe in Santorini? Where you insisted we try ouzo and then couldn't stand up straight for the rest of the night. I recalled, genuinely smiling at the memory. I wasn't that bad, she protested, laughing. For a moment, watching her laugh, I felt a pang of genuine sadness for what we'd lost, or perhaps for what I'd only imagined we had. You tried to swim to the next island because you thought the lights looked pretty. The evening progressed with expensive wine and careful conversation, skillfully steered away from anything substantial. By dessert, she'd moved her chair closer to mine, her leg pressed against my thigh, her hand occasionally brushing my arm. I wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her close. You're right, I said softly. Sometimes you need distance to see what's really important. She couldn't possibly have known how much I meant those words. I think we needed this, she murmured, leaning her head on my shoulder as we walked back to our villa. Just us, remembering why we fell in love. 3 weeks before Clarissa surprised me with plans for our romantic getaway, I'd stayed late at the office finishing a project. Arriving home after midnight, I found our house dark and silent. Clarissa had texted earlier that she was having dinner with colleagues and would be home late. I loosened my tie, dropped my keys on the counter, and noticed her laptop still open on the kitchen island. The screen glowed with the faint blue light of an email notification. I wasn't in the habit of snooping, but something, intuition or perhaps the culmination of months of suspicion, made me pause. The preview showed a message from someone named Victor Ramirez. The subject line read, "Grade property valuation, coastal villa, my uncle's villa." I hesitated only briefly before tapping the keyboard. The screen came to life, displaying Clarissa's email account without requiring a password. She'd forgotten to log out. The message from Victor Ramirez, a real estate broker specializing in international sales, was brief but illuminating. Mrs. Hayes, based on current market trends and the property's unique location, I can confidently value the coastal villa at $2.3 million. As discussed, once the ownership transfer is complete, we can list immediately with my overseas clients. The Japanese investor remains very interested and is prepared to offer cash with minimal contingencies. I've attached the preliminary marketing materials for your approval. Please confirm the timeline for property transfer so we can proceed accordingly. Regards, Victor Ramirez, Global Luxury Properties. My hands were steady as I clicked through the email thread, revealing weeks of correspondence. Clarissa had initiated contact with Ramirez shortly after my uncle's will had been read. While expressing sympathy for my loss to my face, she'd been quietly researching how to liquidate my inheritance. Attached to the emails were photos of the villa, photos I'd never taken, which meant she'd visited the property without telling me. There were also draft listings describing the investment opportunity in glowing terms, and detailed notes about potential buyers from Asia and the Middle East. I scrolled through message after message, each one more damning than the last. In one, she explicitly stated her intention to secure sole ownership before proceeding with any sale. I carefully returned the emails to their unread state, closed the laptop precisely as I'd found it, and poured myself a generous whiskey. By the time I heard Clarissa's key in the door an hour later, my shock had hardened into something colder and more determined. The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and made an appointment with my attorney, Eleanor Winters. "This is straightforward fraud," Eleanor stated after reviewing the emails I'd forwarded to myself. "She intends to transfer your property without fair consideration and immediately sell it, presumably keeping the proceeds." "What are my options?" I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. Eleanor leaned back, fingers steepled. "You could confront her, file for divorce immediately, and request an emergency injunction preventing any property transfer. And if I want something more instructive?" A small smile touched Eleanor's lips. "Then we get creative." Over the next week, Eleanor and I crafted a counter-strategy. Her legal team created duplicate documents that appeared identical to standard property transfer papers, but contained critical differences. "These documents do 3 things," Eleanor explained, sliding the folder across her desk. "First, they transfer exactly 0 ownership rights to Clarissa. Second, they contain language explicitly acknowledging that the signatory is aware of penalties for attempted property fraud. And third, this is the elegant part, they trigger an automatic notification to the Real Estate Fraud Division if submitted for recording." "She'll never read the fine print," I said, flipping through the papers. "She'll just check that I've signed in all the right places." "People rarely read what they think they already understand," Eleanor agreed. "Especially when they believe they're getting exactly what they want." The following week, I noticed Clarissa researching luxury resorts. She cleared her browser history each time, but forgot to disable the autofill suggestions that appeared in the search bar. I pretended not to notice her increased attentiveness, the sudden interest in my day, the casual questions about my schedule. When she finally presented her surprise vacation plan, I was prepared. I'd already arranged for a private investigator to document her meetings with both the real estate broker and the divorce attorney. I'd moved significant assets to accounts she couldn't access and secured all important documents. I'd even prepared a separate set of financial statements showing considerably less wealth than we actually possessed, statements that would seem legitimate to anyone not intimately familiar with our finances. The night before our trip, I met with Eleanor one final time. "Everything's in place," she confirmed. "The documents are perfect replicas visually, but legally they're completely different animals. The moment she or anyone else tries to record them, flags will go up all over the system. And I just need to sign them? On all the marked lines." Eleanor nodded. "Once signed, they become a very sophisticated trap." "What about after?" I asked. "When she realizes?" Eleanor's expression turned serious. "That depends on how far she takes it. Attempted property fraud is a criminal offense. If she submits the documents, there will be consequences." I considered this as I tucked the folder into my briefcase. "Daniel." Eleanor's voice softened slightly. "Are you certain this is how you want to handle it? There are simpler ways to end a marriage." I thought about the careful plotting, the calculated deception, the complete disregard for our years together. "This isn't just about ending the marriage," I replied. "It's about justice." As I left her office into the gathering dusk, I felt a strange sense of calm. The trap was set. All that remained was for Clarissa to spring it herself. Our second day at the resort dawned with picture-perfect weather, clear blue skies, gentle breeze, and waves lapping rhythmically against the cliffs below our villa. Clarissa had planned a couple's massage for the morning, followed by a private lunch on our terrace. As skilled hands worked the tension from my shoulders, I watched Clarissa through half-closed eyes. She seemed utterly relaxed, a small smile playing on her lips. Was she thinking about the documents waiting in our suite? Or perhaps calculating the millions she stood to gain once the villa sold? "You seem distracted," she murmured, reaching across the narrow gap between our massage tables to touch my hand. "Just thinking about how perfect this is," I replied, the lie coming easily now. After lunch, she suggested a walk along the private beach. Hand in hand, we strolled across the pristine sand, making small talk about nothing important. I played my part well, the husband rediscovering his love for his wife, gradually warming to her affection. I've been thinking about those papers, I said casually, as we watched seagulls dive into the waves. Her body tensed slightly beside me, though her face remained neutral. Oh? You're right about the villa, it's just sitting there, and the market's apparently hot right now. Exactly, she agreed, squeezing my hand. It's simply good financial sense. Why don't we look at those documents when we get back to the room? The flash of triumph in her eyes was so quick I would have missed it had I not been watching for it. Only if you're sure. I don't want to ruin our vacation with business. It'll only take a few minutes, I assured her. Then we can focus completely on us. Back in our suite, she tried to maintain the pretense of casualness as she retrieved the leather portfolio from her suitcase. I noticed her hands trembled slightly as she spread the documents across the coffee table. It's really straightforward, she explained, flipping to the pages marked with signature tabs. This just puts both our names on the property for tax purposes. And this one authorizes our attorney to handle the paperwork without us needing to go to boring meetings. I scanned the documents slowly, my law school training allowing me to recognize the subtle differences between these and the ones Eleanor had prepared. To an untrained eye, they appeared identical to legitimate transfer documents, but these would grant Clarissa sole ownership of the villa, with full rights to sell or transfer without my consent. These look fine, I said, reaching for a pen. Do you have a second copy for our records? A flicker of panic crossed her face. I didn't think to bring one, but I can have the lawyer send us copies once they're filed. No problem, I smiled, uncapping the pen. I trust you. I signed my name on each flagged line, the scratch of pen against paper the only sound in the room. With each signature, Clarissa's breathing seemed to quicken slightly. By the final page, she could barely contain her excitement. That's it? I asked, sitting back. That's it, she confirmed, quickly gathering the papers and returning them to the portfolio with trembling fingers. All done. Now we can really enjoy ourselves. She practically skipped to the minibar, retrieving the champagne that had been chilling there since our arrival. The cork popped with a celebratory sound as she filled 2 glasses. To us, she toasted, handing me a flute, her eyes shining with what I now recognized as pure avarice rather than affection. And to new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. As the expensive champagne bubbled down my throat, I watched Clarissa savor her perceived victory. Her shoulders had relaxed, and the constant calculation behind her eyes had given way to open satisfaction. She curled up beside me on the sofa, head resting on my shoulder, one hand casually draped across my chest. I'm so glad we did this, she sighed contentedly. Getting away from everything, reconnecting. It's exactly what we needed. You were absolutely right, I agreed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Sometimes you need to step back to see the whole picture. She tilted her face up to mine, and for a moment I saw genuine emotion there. Not love, but the raw excitement of someone who believes they've executed a perfect con. She kissed me deeply, with more passion than she'd shown in months. When she pulled away, I smiled. For the first time since discovering her plot, my smile was completely genuine. What's that look for? She asked playfully. Just appreciating the moment, I replied truthfully. After finishing our champagne, Clarissa suggested we get ready for dinner. She disappeared into the bathroom, humming softly to herself. I heard her phone chime with a message, then her hushed voice as she made a call she clearly didn't want me to overhear. I stepped out onto the terrace, breathing in the salt air and watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. In my pocket, my own phone vibrated. A text from Eleanor, ready for tomorrow? I typed back quickly, document signed, all. Her response came immediately, fraud division notified. Their local contact will be monitoring for submission. I deleted the conversation and slipped the phone back into my pocket just as Clarissa emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, her hair damp from the shower. Your turn, she said, pressing another kiss to my lips as she passed. I'm thinking that new black dress for dinner, the one you haven't seen yet. Perfect, I replied, watching her rifle through her suitcase with the carefree movements of someone who believes everything is going according to plan. I can't wait to see what tomorrow brings. She had no idea how true those words were. Morning sunlight streamed through the villa's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long golden rectangles across the polished hardwood floors. I'd been awake for hours, watching the sunrise paint the sky in spectacular hues of pink and orange, while Clarissa slept soundly beside me. Her face in repose looked peaceful, almost innocent. A stark contrast to the calculating woman I now knew her to be. I slipped out of bed without waking her, and ordered breakfast for two on the patio, overlooking the ocean. The server arranged fresh fruit, pastries, and a carafe of coffee on our private terrace, the gentle clink of china barely audible above the rhythm of the waves below. When Clarissa finally emerged, wrapped in the plush resort robe, she looked radiant. There was a new lightness to her movements, a sparkle in her eyes that I recognized as the glow of someone who believes they've just secured their future. "You ordered breakfast," she noted with approval, leaning down to kiss my cheek before settling into the chair opposite mine. "You're being suspiciously perfect this morning. Just enjoying our time together," I replied, pouring her coffee exactly as she liked it. 1 sugar, splash of cream. She accepted the cup with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I need to step out for a bit after breakfast. There's a spa treatment I booked as a surprise, a convenient excuse to submit the documents." "No doubt? That sounds wonderful. I thought I might take a swim while you're gone." "Perfect." She bit into a pastry, a small flake of croissant, clinging to her lower lip. "I shouldn't be more than an hour or so." I nodded, sipping my coffee and gazing out at the horizon, where sea met sky in a seamless blue line. We ate in companionable silence, Clarissa scrolling through her phone while I pretended to read the news on mine. The trap was set, I needed only to wait. At precisely 9:30, Clarissa excused herself, returning to the room to dress in casual resort wear, white linen pants and a silk blouse that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She packed the leather portfolio containing the signed documents into her oversized handbag. "See you soon," she called, blowing a kiss as she left the villa. I remained on the patio, counting minutes, anticipation building with each passing second. Eleanor had been explicit in her instructions. Do not intervene, do not warn, do not tip her off. Let the machinery of justice engage on its own. 45 minutes later I was still on the terrace, now reading a novel I couldn't focus on, when I heard voices approaching. Clarissa's voice, higher than usual, tinged with indignation, mingled with the deeper measured tones of an unfamiliar man. The glass door slid open, and Clarissa stepped onto the patio. Behind her stood a tall man in a resort uniform, the guest services manager, judging by his name tag, and a woman in a crisp navy pantsuit. A third figure lingered in the doorway, a broad-shouldered man with close-cropped hair and the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement, though he wore plain clothes. "Mr. Hayes?" The woman spoke first, stepping forward with professional courtesy. "I'm Rebecca Winters with the Regional Property Fraud Division. Could we have a moment of your time?" I set down my book, arranging my features into an expression of polite confusion. "Of course. Is something wrong?" Clarissa stood frozen, her face drained of color. The leather portfolio was clutched tightly against her chest, her knuckles white with tension. "We've been alerted to a potentially fraudulent property transfer involving your villa in Sandpiper Cove," the woman explained, her tone businesslike but not unfriendly. "The documents were flagged in our system when they were submitted for recording approximately 40 minutes ago." I turned to Clarissa with perfectly feigned surprise. "What is she talking about? What documents?" Clarissa's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. The man in the doorway stepped forward, introducing himself as Detective James Marino from the local police. "Ma'am, I need to see the paperwork you were attempting to file," he said firmly, extending his hand toward Clarissa. "This is ridiculous," she finally managed, her voice trembling slightly. "These are standard property transfer documents that my husband signed voluntarily." "Tell them, Daniel." All eyes turned to me. I allowed confusion to morph slowly into dawning comprehension, then concern. "I signed papers transferring partial ownership for tax purposes," I said carefully. "That's what you told me they were." The fraud investigator produced a tablet, scrolling to highlight certain sections. "Mr. Hayes, the documents your wife attempted to submit would transfer complete ownership to her alone, with immediate authorization to sell or dispose of the property without further consent." I turned to stare at Clarissa, allowing genuine anger to show through my carefully constructed facade. Is that true? Her eyes darted between the officials and me, calculation rapidly giving way to panic. There must be some misunderstanding. The lawyer prepared these documents. I didn't read every line. Ma'am, Detective Marino spoke quietly but firmly. We need you to surrender the documents and come with us to answer some questions. Your name has been flagged in our system in connection with an attempted fraudulent property transfer. This is insane, Clarissa's voice rose shrilly. Daniel, tell them this is a mistake. I remained silent, sipping my coffee with steady hands as her world collapsed around her. When I finally spoke, my voice was quiet but clear. I'd like to see the documents, please. Detective Marino nodded. The fraud investigator accepted the portfolio from Clarissa's now trembling hands and placed it on the table between us. I opened it slowly, flipping through pages I already knew by heart, nodding at strategic intervals as though seeing them for the first time. These aren't what you described to me, I said finally, looking up at Clarissa's increasingly desperate face. Not even close. As realization dawned in her eyes, I simply reached for my coffee and took another sip. The remainder of our romantic getaway unfolded like a surreal dream. After 3 hours of questioning at the local police station, Clarissa returned to our villa escorted by hotel security. She wasn't under arrest, not yet, but the fraud division had opened a formal investigation. Her passport had been temporarily flagged, and she'd been instructed not to leave the country until the investigation concluded. I was packing my suitcase when she entered the room. You knew, she said flatly. Not a question, but an accusation. I continued folding my clothes with methodical precision. I found your emails to Victor Ramirez. You forgot to log out of your computer. Her face contorted with fury. You set me up? No, I corrected calmly. I exposed you. There's a difference. They're talking about criminal charges, Daniel, fraud. Do you realize what this will do to my career? My reputation. I finally looked up at her, this stranger I'd shared a bed with for 7 years. Did you consider what stealing my inheritance and emptying our accounts would do to me? She flinched as though I'd slapped her. Don't, I cut her off. I've seen the divorce papers you drafted with Thomas Hadley. I know about the accounts you opened in your name only. I know everything, Clarissa. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, waves crashed against the cliffs, indifferent to the human drama unfolding above. What happens now? She finally asked, her voice small. I zipped my suitcase closed with finality. Now I go home. You should probably call your lawyer. And us? I nearly laughed at the audacity of the question. There hasn't been an us for quite some time. I filed for divorce this morning while you were being questioned. The papers will be waiting when you return. Her face crumpled. Not from heartbreak, I knew, but from the realization that her carefully constructed plan had not only failed but backfired spectacularly. You never intended to work things out, she said accusingly. Neither did you, I replied. The difference is, I didn't hide behind fake romance and champagne toasts. I called for the bellhop to collect my luggage, leaving Clarissa standing alone in the middle of our luxury villa, surrounded by the trappings of a reconciliation that never existed. The flight home was the most peaceful 5 hours I'd experienced in months. No pretense, no calculated smiles, no wondering what scheme was forming behind those beautiful eyes I'd once trusted completely. Mark met me at the airport, concern evident on his face. How'd it go? Exactly as planned, I said, sliding into the passenger seat of his car. Eleanor's documents worked perfectly. And Clarissa? Currently enjoying our romantic getaway alone, probably on the phone with very expensive lawyers. He shook his head as he pulled away from the curb. I still can't believe she thought she'd get away with it. People believe what they want to believe, I replied, watching the familiar cityscape slide past the window. She believed I was too trusting to catch on. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. The fraud investigation expanded as authorities discovered Clarissa had already lined up buyers for the villa and opened offshore accounts to receive the funds. Her law firm placed her on indefinite leave pending the outcome of the investigation. Meanwhile, I changed the locks on our house and began the meticulous process of untangling our lives. Eleanor's team handled the divorce proceedings with ruthless efficiency, using the fraud investigation as leverage for favorable terms. Clarissa fought back initially, hiring the best attorneys money could buy, but as evidence mounted against her, her position weakened. The final settlement left her with little more than what she'd brought into the marriage, and legal bills that would take years to pay off. 3 months after our ill-fated romantic getaway, I received the final divorce decree. The same day, the district attorney's office informed me they were pursuing criminal charges against Clarissa for attempted fraud. I celebrated alone that evening on the deck of my uncle's villa, now officially and solely mine. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and gold. The same view that had tempted Clarissa's greed now offered me something entirely different: peace. I'd spent weeks renovating the old place, repairing weathered boards, updating plumbing, and painting faded walls. Each nail hammered and each brushstroke felt like reclaiming not just the property, but pieces of myself. As darkness settled over the water, I poured a glass of excellent wine, not the overpriced champagne of false celebrations, but a rich Cabernet that Uncle Richard would have appreciated. I raised it in a silent toast to him, to lessons learned, and to the unexpected freedom that comes from betrayal survived. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "How's the bachelor life treating you?" I snapped a photo of the sunset view and sent it with a simple reply: "Better than expected." The breeze carried the scent of salt and possibilities as stars emerged overhead. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt genuinely at peace. The villa that was meant to be my downfall had become my sanctuary instead. Revenge, I discovered, wasn't about making Clarissa suffer, though that had certainly happened. It was about reclaiming my life, my inheritance, and my future, from someone who had tried to steal them all. I sipped my wine and listened to the rhythm of the waves, letting the sound wash away the last echoes of betrayal. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, sitting alone on my deck with nothing but ocean before me and stars above, I was finally free.